Stranger Things took the cast from running away from scary monsters to fighting them and living every moment not knowing what would happen next. In the same breath, the actors managed to keep up with the strange events on set by improvising some of their scenes. And the crazy thing is, these unscripted moments were so good, they were kept in the show and turned out to be some of the most emotional and realistic scenes. Being an actor on the set of Stranger Things means being ready for intense action and running around, especially for Millie Bobby Brown, who plays 11. And you won't believe the moment 11 collapsed in the show. The action was also unintentional, as Millie didn't know that would happen, but she got so exhausted acting in the sauna scene that she collapsed right into Finn Wolfhard's hands, which worried him as he looked to the director to make sure nothing terrible was happening to Millie. However, this part was kept in the show for good reasons, like how well it relates to 11 in the show. 11 often gets exhausted after using her powers, and Millie getting so tired after doing that on set was a beautiful moment that couldn't be left out. Another heartbreaking moment was unscripted in the show, and that's the scene where Lucas cried for help.
Stay with me, Max. Hang on, just hang on. I got help.
From the pain in his voice and how emotional he was in that scene, it's hard to believe he didn't prepare for that moment, but Caleb just knew at that instant to include that line with how deeply he was into the role. It's wild how good these young actors are as they continue to improvise many of the emotional scenes in ways that increase the depth and meaning of these moments. And you wouldn't have imagined the creative way Joseph Quinn used to improvise this scene.
It's finally my year. I love you, Dad.
The scene where Eddie passes away is already so sad, and Joseph adding that line made everything even more heartbreaking. Gatton stayed in character by responding, "I love you too," which made it even more emotional. Moving away from the sad unscripted moments in Stranger Things. Eddie Munson is a great character who had so many incredible moments, which is one of the reasons why it was hard for fans to see him go. The ironic thing about Joseph's performance is that he improvised in many of his...
You saying Sinclair's been taken in by the dark side?
Something like that?
Something like that? Jesus Christ.
Throwing the cookie and repeating the last words they said to him wasn't part of the script. But Joseph was so into the character that he didn't realize he went off script to give fans that iconic moment. The craziest thing is the natural reaction from Finn and Gaten because they weren't expecting the cookie to be thrown at them. It's so funny how Gaten yelled "Jesus Christ" out of shock, but it's even more impressive to see Joseph get back into the script with none of them breaking character. It was so good that the director had no choice but to keep it in. Another wild moment in Stranger Things is when Eddie gives himself a chest punch, which was also unscripted.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I wouldn't remember me either, Chrissy. Honestly.
This moment initially scared Grace, who portrayed Chrissy, until she realized Joseph was having fun and had to laugh because it was almost unexpected to do something like that randomly, even if it was required in the script. But Joseph continued to improvise many of his lines in this scene, and it was clear he was just being himself when he asked a question in an improvised line following his chest punch. I have stuff in my hair. Since it wasn't scripted that he fell dramatically like that, asking if there were leaves in his hair was also clearly not supposed to be in the conversation. Interestingly, he didn't stop there, as he uttered another iconic line that wasn't in the script.
And other good news, flattery works with me, so...
It's not very hard to see why every fan of the show fell in love with Eddie, even though he was a new cast member in Season 4, as this moment where he made a random comment about how the mask was affecting him was also improvised by Joseph, who just wanted to get the mask off his face.
I'm suffocating.
At one point, his improvisation became so much that his co-stars became confused when he made another comment that wasn't included in the script, Harrington's SC.
Harrington's got her. Don't you, big boy?
Every day you lose your house and car in one fell swoop.
It's super convenient and enjoyable for Joseph to have come up with these random actions on the set of Stranger Things because they align with his character. Interestingly, improvisation with Joseph doesn't end at being fun or making hilarious comments alone, as it sometimes involves play fighting, which he had with Gaten during one of their character scenes.
Good one. Son of a bitch!
As best buddies on and off the set of Stranger Things, it's pretty ironic how Gaten didn't hold back from playing along after Joseph initiated the fight. And that's the reason their characters are such good friends with fantastic chemistry in the show. Just like Eddie was set up to become deceased in the show, Billy's fate was also made to turn out that way, and many people were upset to see that happen. However, the actor Dacre gave a mind-blowing performance in which he improvised a moment in the heartbreaking sauna scene.
You kids think this is some kind of sick prank, huh? You little shits think this is fun?
Headbutting the window on the door wasn't scripted, and it was Dacre's idea to add more action to the scene, which came out great and had to be kept in, despite every scary scene in the show. How emotions are interpreted makes everything wholesome and real in this scene with Billy and 11. You didn't know Millie improvised touching Dacre's face. The script didn't include this action, but Millie deciding to create an emotional connection between her character and Dacre's character was a life-changing decision that they couldn't afford to keep away from the final cut. The relationship between Hopper and Joyce has been a great one to watch on the screen, and one of the stability the Hawkins kids need in their battle with the Upside Down. However, despite the cast, David Harbour and Winona Ryder being just colleagues on set, they launched into an unscripted romantic moment when they met again to film a scene in Season 4.
I am not having another funeral.
So instead of doing whatever was in the script, they both agreed to include kissing on the day of filming, even though they weren't instructed to do so. While still on unscripted kisses, guess who had their first kiss on the set, even though it wasn't scripted? Towards the end of Season 2, Max kissed Lucas, even though it wasn't in the script. But Sadie was aware she would be doing it after one of the Duffer brothers hinted to her about the unscripted kiss earlier in the day before they started filming. Sadie was initially stressed about the situation because kissing wasn't in the script. Ross Duffer mentioned he was teasing Sadie, who ended up taking it so strongly, and then he had to make it real, and Sadie ended up doing the kiss. In the end, however, this unscripted kiss wasn't generally accepted by the fans when it was filmed because both Sadie and Caleb were kids at the time. Another loving relationship that has blossomed right before our eyes is that of Mike and 11. That moment where he tried to tell her he loved her but ended up rambling was wholly improvised.
What I want to say is that I know that That's the copy.
When he couldn't find the words again, he started to ramble, and it made sense for the production to keep it in, as it aligned with what was happening in the scene. One of the reasons Stranger Things is super successful is because the professional cast knows when to improvise just in case things aren't going to plan without ruining the shoot. And that's what Brett, who plays Murray, did here.
Oops.
The egg dropping was not a part of the script, but when it dropped, Brett reacted naturally, and they almost burst into a big laugh with Nancy holding back her laugh. But it was super amazing how they handled it and made the scene look so authentic. Speaking about when props on set decide to take over a scene just like how Murray's egg dropped without being in the script, 11 also had many of those moments in the script, but in this case it wasn't accidental.
Call the police.
Excuse me, young lady.
We've discussed this. Mornings are for coffee and contemplation.
However, in that scene, he was meant to say, "Ms. are for contemplation and coffee," but then David forgot his lines, messed it up, and made it look awesome. Still in Season 3, we saw another extremely emotional moment when 11 read the letter Hopper wrote to her before his temporary demise. While reading the loving words Hopper had written to her, LA cried her heart out. This scene was so heartbreaking that many fans cried along, and the interesting thing about this moment is that Millie revealed she wasn't just crying as her character, but also as herself, which made everything look real. She mentioned that she hadn't read the letter beforehand or heard Hopper's pre-recorded voice, which made her reaction on the spot very raw.